p.m. weekday afternoons on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Cloudy today with a high of 25, then tonight cloudy with a low of 0, wind chills of 17 below.
For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TheGailey Welcome to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, JP Derbragosian. Executive producer Jim Pounds, hello.
Hello, all.
And in this control room today with us is Patrick. Hey, Patrick.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So how are we all holding up?
Well, we're sitting upright. I think that's a good sign.
Egg prices are up to $10 a carton. You can see a screen capture of that. That is Cub Foods generic egg prices from their website this past weekend. You can see it on our Blue Sky account, the screen capture. $10 for 18 eggs. That's not, I was going to say 18 dozen eggs. No. For 18 eggs, a dozen and a half.
Right.
I think it was $8, $7 for a dozen. Egg prices coming down. No, they're not. Well, our call-in number today, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205, or you can chat with us on our YouTube live stream. What is on the show today? A letter has gone out to all federal employees trying to get them to quit. Where are all the protests against the Trump administration? Oh, they are happening. But up first, Project 2025 is happening at warp speed. But I want to start with a New York Times blaming the Democratic Party poll. And as you know me, as folks are getting to know me or tuning in for the first time, if you've been, with me for a while, you know that I have a particular distaste for the New York Times for good reason. And this is as a former broadcast, TV journalist, and I taught journalism. I protest when a major media outlet uses junk science and anti-trans doctors when they're covering LGBTQ healthcare. Like, that is bad journalism.
Or asks for the other side of the story when you're talking about LGBT healthcare.
Because there's another side of the story, apparently.
That's right.
They have been particularly feckless in their coverage of Southwest Asia, which is where my people, Armenian people, come from. And their coverage enables MAGA. And this weekend is a case in point. So they published a new poll. They partner with Ipsos. I don't normally like talking about the New York Times, so I'm not going to make a habit of this. And I even made a pledge over the weekend on Blue Sky that I'm not going to post their stuff anymore. But this really I'm going to try to stay on the good side of FCC swearing laws as I go through here, because it really, really frustrates me.
Please do.
So they published a poll with Ipsos, and here was the headline. Many Americans say the Democratic Party does not share their priorities. Subheadline, our new poll found that Americans believe abortion, LGBTQ issues, and climate change concern Democrats more than the cost of living. Okay, so this whole story and this whole poll is about how Americans supposedly think that Democrats are obsessed with the LGBTQ community and don't care about the real issues like the cost of living. Let's just let that set in for a moment. As you can imagine in this article, there are BS quotes about how the Democrats have gone too far and how they don't, on LGBTQ rights, have gone too far, and how they don't care about me as a regular American. Okay, because apparently queer folks are not regular Americans.
Oh, that's interesting.
Here's a couple quotes from their article, because I want to be, fair and quoting from the article. They say, in their poll, just 4% of Americans listed LGBTQ issues as very important to them personally, but 31% of folks in this poll said that they were a Democratic priority. Okay. They interviewed a gentleman, I'm assuming they interviewed a person Mohammed Khan, 30, an accountant from Philadelphia who voted for MAGA and Trump last year.
Really?
And Mr. Khan said in the article, gender equality, gender pay, and LGBT rights, taking off the issues he thinks preoccupy Democrats. I think it's valuable, he said, but it's too much. Okay.
Offends his
So,
sensibility.
There are two ways that I could look at this. One is just as a queer person reading this article.
Right.
The other, which is where I first went to when I read this article, was from my journalism hat, from working in journalism for 10 years, for teaching it to students. And it was so disconnected, this poll, from reality, in the sense of on day one of his administration, Trump issued an executive order defining gender, which was based off of junk science, by the way. All of his ads were about hating transgender people and queer people last cycle. The Democrats were not running any ads about pro-LGBTQ rights. They were not doing that. He is already in the first 2 weeks attacking hospitals that provide gender care, trying to pull their funding. And we're seeing hospitals across the country pulling their funding. One in Colorado, because they were already in deficit mode. And they're like, if we keep doing this gender affirming care for kids, they're going to pull our funding and then we're going to have to go out of business altogether. He is erasing all mentions and resources to the LGBTQ community and programming from all federal agencies. More on that later. The question then is, who of both political parties, who is obsessed with the LGBTQ community? Who? Democrats?
Well, and
Like, are you kidding me right now?
I think he just required that all federal employees take their pronouns off their signatures of their emails.
Yes. Okay. So every political cycle, presidential cycle, going back to the 70s, always seems to involve the Republican Party and MAGA losing their minds about queer people and organizing to attack us. Remember, there was gays in the military. There was queer people in schools, because apparently they were all pedophiles. That's apparently still a thing for all of them. Defense of Marriage Act in 96. Anti-gay marriage amendments in 2004. Trans healthcare and trans kids in sports, 2016, 2020. The GOP, queer books in school libraries, 2020, 2024. The GOP and MAGA do more policy and legislation around the queer community in a single year than the Democrats ever have in the 21st century. The ACLU reporting, this is, what are we? We're February 3rd. The ACLU is reporting that Republicans across the country have already introduced 290 pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation in the first month of 2025. Did the New York Times include that in their reporting? They claim in their poll only 4% of Americans care about LGBTQ rights as a priority. Okay, well, if that's true, then the next journalistic question to ask is, why is the GOP passing all this legislation? Why are there all these executive orders going after the LGBTQ community? If nobody cares about it, then who actually is the party dealing with LGBTQ issues? I can guarantee you, as a queer person, it is not the Democratic Party.
No.
In terms of actual things that they do. Yes, they are on board. What they do, and I'll be very clear here to my folks in the Democratic Party who are allies, what they are doing is trying to pass this legislation to stop making this a continual issue, right? They're trying to pass protections to say, okay, you know what, stop it. We're not going to kick people out of their homes and their apartments. We're not going to have doctors kicking them out of offices. Both of those things happen all the time.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
We are not going to have people kicked out of school because they're trans.
Or jobs.
We're not going to have books banned because we don't like the queer content in them. Okay, this is what the Democrats are trying to do, and they introduce, maybe a dozen bills across. It's more than that, but they do not introduce 290 bills in the first month of 2025 about the LGBTQ community. There is one party that is obsessed with us, that is constantly talking about us, that is constantly introducing policies at the federal level, the state level, and local levels. And I'm telling you right now, it is not the Democratic Party. So why isn't the New York Times talking about that in their article and in their poll? Like, if it really is such they want to talk about how awful the Democrats are. That's all they want to talk about, how awful the Democrats are, how terrible. They've gone too far. No. If you believe from your poll, the data, that 4% of Americans audacious to say that in your poll. 4% of America, only 4% think that that's a priority. Then the next question that follows is, why are you on board then with a president that is spending all of his time in the first 2 weeks
Scapegoating.
going after us?
Right. So unimportant.
Look at the data if you're paying attention. And we know that the Times isn't paying attention. I mean, GLAAD has been going after them for years now. I mean, they've even gone to the point now where they're literally putting trucks with billboard-sized messages on the sides of these trucks outside of the offices of the New York Times,
Right.
telling them like, hey, what are you all doing? Like, knock it off.
It's very sad what's happened to the New York Times, the LA Times, which I was a subscriber to for 20-something years, and to the Washington Post. They're shells of what they used to be. It's really, really tragic.
But they know what's happening.
Yes.
And this is what I don't understand, is that there was no editor. You're telling me there was no editor, there was no journalist in that newsroom that went, wait a minute. Okay, so Americans think that the Democrats are doing too much on LGBTQ rights. Well, has anybody noticed how many things that he's been doing that are related to LGBTQ people over the past 2 weeks alone? They made one mention in that article about how Democrats didn't run on LGBTQ issues, that it was the Republicans who kept running on trans issues. That was the only other side of the story that they offered there. But what it ends up doing is it creates this like idea that Democrats have gone too far on LGBTQ rights.
It's the justification.
Which is not true, frankly.
Right.
We are trying to just get to baseline. We're just trying to get to things like, hey, stop kicking us out of apartments. Stop kicking us out of classes. Like, stop banning books.
Right.
Those are just sort of baseline human things. You know what I mean? We're not getting any special treatment from the Democrat. They're not trying to give us special rights or whatever. So it's so frustrating to see that. And that narrative is taken over. Has it taken over? I don't know. I mean, folks, you tell me what you're seeing in your areas. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Are you seeing non-queer allies talking about how far the queer, the Democratic Party has gone? Like, out of control, apparently. It's too far. They don't care about the price of eggs. Oh, really? That was another thing the Democrats could have talked about.
Right.
Or I mean, the Democrats, the New York Times, that's what they could have talked about. They could have said, wait a minute, if only 4% of Americans care about LGBTQ rights, why is this administration doing so much about it? And oh, by the way, you care about the cost of living. He's implementing these tariffs over the weekend. They're not going to bring down the cost of living. Price of eggs not coming down anytime soon.
Not this year.
So there's this complete paradoxical reality that we're living in, that the New York Times is issuing polls asking questions that reiterate this, which denigrates the LGBTQ community and enables MAGA.
Are they currying favor or are they incompetent?
Sorry. See, when this happens, I lose my mind.
I know.
I lose my mind.
I feel you.
We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Project 2025 and how it's at warp speed right now and how that affects the entire LGBTQ community. You're listening to The Gailey Show.
Hi, I'm Peter Solak.
And I'm Adam Ostrowski.
We are here at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces to talk about the joy of live fire cooking. Cooking over a live fire is the oldest and most basic form of cooking.
What's new is in the way fire is handled and its heat is managed.
It's easier to experience and enjoy the smell and taste of food cooked over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces sells and installs live fire grills, fire pits, and ovens. Let us help you experience the smell, the taste, the fun of cooking with fire.
Pizza was first made and is still best made in an open fire oven. The radiant and conductive heat of a live fire is unmatched for wood roasting and baking artisan breads too.
Come see the many ways you can cook over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood and gas units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at woodlandstoves.com. Find the fire that works for you. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. Out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. Even though Auto Technical is a small nonprofit, we have helped more families with transportation than any organization in Minnesota. Since '94, we have reconditioned donated vehicles so they have a higher tax benefit. Call Richard at 612-919-5526. 612-919-5526 or autotech.org.
If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grand Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Progressive change doesn't just happen. It takes dedication and a lot of hard work. 25 years ago, the DataBank pioneered a new generation of software tools for progressive organizations here in Minnesota. Since then, thousands of organizations have used the DataBank to create progressive change. Today, the DataBank continues to help progressive organizations like AM 950. To have the DataBank help your organization build capacity and create more change, text CHANGE to 612-540-0500 or go to thedatabank.com. The DataBank, a quarter century of dedication and hard work for progressive organizations.
Hi, everyone. Twitter is a cesspool of ugliness and hate. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads all no longer allow basic fact-checking, meaning hate and bigotry will be officially recognized as acceptable discourse. Even TikTok is headed into the right-wing toilet. But fret not. Come to where the sky is blue. Both AM 950 Radio and the Matt McNeil Show are now on Blue Sky. Remember the time when you didn't despise checking your social media accounts? That's Blue Sky. Sign up today, then search and follow the Matt McNeil Show and AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I'm JP Derabagosian, executive producer Jim Pounds with me here in studio. Our call-in number 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Or you can chat with us on our YouTube live stream. I don't know why I'm apologizing for feeling so frustrated about that poll in the New York Times, but it's absolutely, I just see stuff like that. And when I see what the real story should be, which is the disconnect between what's happening in the Republican Party and Americans, but they try to foist it onto the Democrats, it just drives me absolutely bonkers. You heard that ad that Matt McNeil was just talking about being on Blue Sky. Some new Musk has apparently said on Twitter, I'm going to dead name that, on Twitter, that you can no longer protest or say anything negative about the Trump administration on X. And if you do, you will be immediately kicked off.
Everybody do that right now.
I saw that was being reposted on, I reposted rather from Rick Smith's show was talking about that today. Anyone protesting the Trump administration will be suspended from X, Musk says on his platform. All anti-Trump drama can go to a liberal echo chamber like Threads, Reddit, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook. Really?
Wow.
Really? I wonder what
He's never been to Facebook, I don't think.
What's his face? The anti-social Zuckerberg. I wonder what he has to say about being called a liberal echo chamber.
Yeah. It's just word salad. They don't know half the time what they're talking about, really. Just filling up the space with nothing.
No, but free speech. And over the weekend, and we're starting to see that Musk wants agencies, federal agencies, to use Twitter exclusively.
Oh boy.
To make their announcements of what's happening there. So it's like, okay, you're trying to make it so that we all have to go there to get the information about what's happening with these federal agencies, in lieu of getting press releases or, signing up for press emails. Right. And then just regular folks who want to know what's happening at these agencies. But then when we get on there, we're not allowed to be critical of the Trump administration.
It sounds very much like a country in Europe in the 1930s that it just sounds really familiar.
Multiple countries in Europe. I mean, Italy, Spain, right. Germany. Right. So, let's recall that the current president knew nothing about Project 2025 on the campaign trail. Knew absolutely nothing about it. Nope. And there was reporting in Newsweek last fall about how nobody from Project 2025 was going to be in his administration, that it was some cranky thing that conservatives who knew nothing about what was going on, right? Okay, we all know that was a lie. The literal head of the Project 2025 is being put into a major position within the administration. But here we go. It's only been 2 weeks.
Yep.
2 weeks. Project 2025 said that they wanted to abolish the Gender Policy Council within the Executive Office of the President. Done.
Check.
Already.
Yep.
Project 2025 called on the Department of Defense to reverse policies that allowed transgender individuals to serve in the military. Done through executive order.
Yep.
Not implemented,
No,
but
almost impossible to implement. But
correct. But
they've been
here
able
we
to
are.
blab about it.
Again,
Yep.
right? Project 2025 calls on the Department of Justice to defend the First Amendment right of those who would discriminate against LGBTQ plus people. It also objects to the DOJ notifying states that their bans on abortion and medical services to trans persons may violate federal law. Already, Trump has announced, so that was what it called for. Where are we at? Trump announced his selection for Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, who is a far-right California lawyer with a track record that is notable for her attacks on blue states with pro-LGBTQ laws. So we're well on the way there, installing leadership that will do exactly what's called for in Project 2025. Project 2025, what it calls for, the next conservative administration to limit the application of the Supreme Court's ruling in Bostock versus Clayton County, which held that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the sex discrimination clauses in there, applied to LGBTQ plus people. It also calls on the administration to not allow Bostock's holdings to be extended to the broader category of sexual orientation or gender identity. And last week, he tasked the department to correct the Biden administration's misapplication of the Supreme Court's Bostock ruling. So here we go. That is also check the box. Project 2025, what it calls for, dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID's DEI apparatus, which includes issuing a directive to cease the promotion of DEI agendas, including the bullying LGBTQ plus agenda. What's happening today? AP News is reporting that staffers of USAID were instructed to stay out of the agency's Washington headquarters. Officers today are blocking lawmakers from entering the lobby after, the shadow president, Musk, announced that Trump had agreed with him to shut down the agency. Okay. Project 2025 recommends that the next Department of Health and Human Services Secretary reverse the focus on LGBTQ plus equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and penalizing marriage, replacing such policies with those that encourage marriage, work, motherhood, fatherhood, and nuclear families. I assume that means straight nuclear families.
Are you leaning to a good news somewhere, or is this?
What's happening? The Trump administration has scrubbed references to LGBTQ health and information on certain vaccines already from federal websites, including top public health agencies. This follows last Wednesday's memo instructing agencies to end all programs that use taxpayer money to promote gender ideology. And they were disabling related information from websites as of Friday afternoon. So when 86% of LGBTQ voters last November said, nah, we're going to vote for Harris Walls, we don't want Project 2025, they were correct. It is sweeping. It is on warp speed. Everything, I was just reading, those are the major things in Project 2025. And they've already either completed some of them or they are well on their way to making them happen. And that affects all of us, I think that there are, I know that there have been conversations that have been happening over the past few years of them within the LGB part of the community of why are we having to support trans rights and blah, 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 blah. I don't even want to give it a platform for that nonsense argument. Well, they are going after the entire queer community. And we need to stay united in our fight back against this. So those 14% of people that voted for Trump, 14% of queer people that voted for Trump, yikes.
Well, and I always say this to people, we're responsible for our own. If you're a white woman and 52% of white women vote to be oppressed by the rapist or whatever, whatever the deal is, then white women need to be on white women. Do you know what I mean? We all have to get after each of our own constituencies and challenge them. And we have 14% of ours that's a problem, and whatever those other numbers are. But I think the only way we're going to win.
Got to
is
fit
if
in a
we-
break here.
Okay.
You are listening to The Gailey Show. See you on the flip side.
This is Santita Jackson. Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central, we'll bring you the best progressive talkers, thinkers, and doers on AM 950, Minnesota's progressive voice.
Hi, it's Penny from Nightingale, your gathering spot near 26th and Lyndale in South Minneapolis since 2012. Come check out the fun and vibrant atmosphere. Besides our traditional favorites like the Nightingale burger and fries, did you know we also have delicious vegetarian and vegan options? Plus, we have one of the best gluten-free menus in town. And for drinks, our bar staff is always creating fun new cocktails along with a thoughtfully curated wine and beer list. Join us at Nightingale where good times and great flavors come together.
Being a true American means more than just baseball, blue jeans, and rock and roll. Being an American also means taking responsibility. So if you're a man turning 18, do your part. Register with Selective Service. It keeps you eligible for college loans, government jobs, and job training. Plus, it's the law. To register, log on to www.sss.gov or pick up a Selective Service registration card at any post office. Be a man and register.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950 for Snap Construction again. Does your home feel colder than it should with the furnace constantly running? Or do certain rooms always feel colder than the rest of the house? Those are signs the attic in your home may need an insulation upgrade. Snap Construction can help by providing a free energy audit for your home's insulation. The average cost of getting new insulation can cost much less than a new furnace. Plus, Snap Construction is a BPI certified installer. That means if you use Snap for your next insulation project, you qualify for up to $650 in total rebates from your energy provider. After my free inspection, my insulation upgrade was completed within a few weeks and the rebate check was in the mail. Snap to it and reduce your heating bill this winter with Snap Construction. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP for your free energy audit when you mention AM 950. Snap Construction, arguably the most well-reviewed exterior contractor and insulation company in the metro.
Hi, this is Ken Hageland, host of Living Healthy and Aging Well, inviting you to listen to our live call-in talk show airing every Saturday from noon to 1, where we talk about your health and your life and provide insights you need to know to live and age well. Each week, we talk with guests who provide answers to important questions regarding healthcare, elder care, end-of-life care, and self-care for caregivers, and help you and your loved ones plan for the future and enjoy your highest quality of life today. Please join us every Saturday from noon to 1 on AM 950 for Living Healthy and Aging Well.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Cloudy today with a high of 25, then tonight cloudy with a low of 0, wind chills of 17 below.
For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina city line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
You're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Coming to you live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TheGailey Show. That's GAILY Show. This is The Gailey Show. I'm your host, JP Darbogosian, executive producer Jim Pound, still with me in the studio today. Our call-in number 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Jim was chiding me in the break for not talking about solutions and things to do. And I think I know that in reporting all of this news and being able to go through and say, here's what's happening on Project 2025, and the scope of it is so sweeping and it's happening so fast that I think that it can lead to people sitting back and going, it's not game over, but we're kind of screwed right now. And that's not my intention to do that. I think my intention with that was to say, look, here is, a corporate media, New York Times, saying that the Democrats are the problem. The Democrats have gone too far. The Democrats are too obsessed with the LGBTQ community.
Right.
And in reality, we have a party that is governing on LGBTQ issues not exclusively, but it is one of their main priorities. And they have a whole playbook around it, Project 2025, and they have been implementing across the board. So the article that the Times should have been writing was 4% of Americans in our poll, bold statement to say 4% of all Americans don't care about LGBT. Only 4% think that LGBTQ rights should be a priority. Okay, well then why is one party doing all of this stuff? That was my argument that I was making there and listing all of that stuff out. Okay. We're going to talk about protests that are happening around the country, because protests are happening today. In particular, is a day without, the protests are called a day without immigrants. But we're going to have folks that are coming on this month to talk about, and particularly tomorrow on the show, we are going to talk about reclaiming power. And if you are a person who has never thought about running for a school board or running for a library board or being on a nonprofit board, but you're sitting there and going, what they're doing in schools isn't correct, or they are, what they're banning books. I don't like that. That's not something that they should be doing. You already have infinitely more qualifications than the people that MAGA is running to get on these boards.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that, what goes into that, how that gets started tomorrow. But today, we just wanted to break down, this is how the corporate media is covering us. And so when you are in these conversations with folks who are saying the Democrats are going too far, put your hand up. If you have to do a 90s talk to the hand, if you have to, just stop it right there, shut it down, and say, there is a party that is obsessed with the LGBTQ community. There is a party that has gone too far. That party is the party that introduced 290 bills across the country in 1 month alone, and that is not the Democratic Party.
Right.
Shut them down.
Yep.
Right there.
There's your power.
And when people say, when you hear Democratic activists or folks, that are voters, they're going, well, I voted for Kamala and I voted for, Walz, but sometimes I just feel like they're going too far and all these LGBTQ rights. Like, no, like we need to talk about price of eggs. Stop them and say, look, there is a party that is obsessed and they're just passing cruel legislation and cruel policies left and right. The Democrats want to pass legislation that gets rid of that nonsense. It is not the majority of trust me, it is not the majority of their policies. We know that. The stuff that they do can be key and can be critical, and we support that, obviously, but they are not the party that is obsessed with the queer community. Right. So a letter went out to federal employees. Email, rather, went out to federal employees. And I think this is absolutely diabolical, a way of how do you shut down an agency without shutting down an agency? So, Jim.
Well, there have been times in the Clinton administration, there was a time when they sent out and we've been, any of you that have worked in for-profit situations, which I don't know why they think that's such a great environment. That wasn't my experience. For-profit situations are some of the worst places you can work, frankly, inhuman. But the Clinton administration wanted to try to buy out some people and, reduce the size of the federal payroll. Okay, that's something that's a possible business conversation. But they sent this email out at 5:35 in the afternoon to, from what I understand, the majority of all federal employees. So first of all, what an irresponsible, unprofessional, and unbusinesslike thing that is to do, number one. And I think the implication of it was you have 2 weeks to decide whether you're going to just quit and accept this deal of 7 months of pay, which most people that are complaining about it say, this doesn't feel very legal, or this doesn't feel very clear. This doesn't feel very like anybody's thought about it. This sounds like somebody's going off half-cocked, which guess who that sounds like? And they're saying when you do something like this with government employees, with union employees, there's a process. You communicate with people. You're trying to do something within an agency. This is just taking a hatchet to our federal government because of some sort of bitterness. And the bitterness comes out when a series of FAQs. There was a response to the FAQs, and somebody said, "Well, can I get a job in the next 7 months while I'm being paid nothing?" And they said, "Oh, yes, we want you to do something more productive in the private sector," which is an insult, frankly, to
he's almost directly quoting there, folks.
to the 7 people that I know that have worked in government, federal, local, and state. That is an insult to a very honorable career. And I think it's disgusting, frankly, to imply that the soullessness of for-profit capitalism is a more productive form of work than working for the government. I know there's problems with the government. I know the government's not perfect, but what a ghoulish way of talking to people that have spent their lives doing something that's not always easy, not always, you don't get the thanks you deserve. You don't get the money you deserve necessarily. The only thing you might get is good benefits. It was such a hateful way of doing it. And I think they're hoping 10% of the federal government resigns, and I think they're going to be lucky to get 2%. I hope people stand strong, and I hope people stand against this and make them look like fools, because they are. Frankly, they're not even good business people. I can't see a business person saying that's the way to manage an organization like that. I'm tired of that.
They're trying to get rid.
I'm tired of the claim that they're good business people, because I don't see that. I don't see the evidence of that. They seem like morons to me, like unprofessional people, uneducated people. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's to me, it seems like it's a way of, how do you shut down the federal government and an agency without saying you're shutting down? How do you shut down USDA without telling everybody you're shutting down USDA? Oh, you put a hiring freeze in. So you say, we're not hiring any more people, and then we're going to offer buyout packages. So we're going to reduce the number of people. When you reduce the number of people, you have to reduce the number of projects that you can do. Otherwise, you can't get things done.
But there's a process, and this is exactly the blueprint that the South African used to destroy, what used to be called Twitter. I mean, he did the same thing. He threatened everybody in an overnight email and created chaos in that whole. If you talk to anybody that worked there, he basically set off an atom bomb in his own company, and that's not management. That's what a 4-year-old does. That's a temper tantrum. And we certainly know both of these two are temper tantrum people. So here we've got a temper tantrum focused at our entire government, which is, I've never talked about being destroyed from within. I think it's shocking. I think people should be lighting up the, phones or the whatever's, the emails of their representatives, because this is clearly anti-American, clearly anti sort of respect at all. And for any of these people's careers, I can't believe the disrespect of that. It's really disrespectful and beneath them, which is saying something, in my opinion. So what I ask people to do is have some empathy for the person that received this email, that's worked somewhere for 15 years and thought, be more productive on the for-profit side. You were just insulted by the people who worked so hard to try to be in charge of this government and are now driving the dump truck right off the cliff. What is that about? What purpose does that serve? How does that help the United States? Well, it doesn't in any way, shape, or form.
That's the point. They don't want to have any more regulations on anything. You can see it with Musk trying to get rid of the FAA rather, because they were critical of his, fancy space program that kept exploding in the sky. Yeah. So clearly we are frustrated. And I imagine that there's going to be many, 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 many more of these days. 952-946-6205. 946-6205. How are you frustrated today? You've been listening to me rant and listening to us rant for the past 40 minutes. But there is something that, over the weekend, I was wondering, okay, where are the protests? I don't see a lot of, across the country protests. I was hearing about things, here and there. And actually, there are a lot of protests going on. So AP News was reporting that thousands of people were protesting mass deportations in Southern California, including Los Angeles yesterday, where demonstrators blocked a major freeway for several hours. The USA Today is reporting that protesters congregated in front of the Office of Personnel Management in D.C. today, vowing to return every morning this week to stand against what they're calling a coup by Musk and his aides to seize the data from the Office of Personnel Management. Businesses across the Chicago area today closed in a Day Without Immigrants protest. So that was happening today.
Good. Well done.
In Chicago, as part of the protest, a number of Chicago area businesses chose to either close or to make donations in solidarity. You see those protests happening across the country today. There are a Day Without Immigrant protests where people are walking out of the job or businesses are shutting down. There is the 50-51, so 50501 movement, which stands for 50 states, 50 protests, 1 day, which is garnering support. They're trying to organize through the social media, and they're calling it as a fight against fascism, that these are going to take place on February 5th. So you can look up more on Google and other in your social media platforms, whichever you're on, for 50501 movement to hook up with a local protest. I looked up ours on that site, and it looks like they're going to be gathering at St. Paul College on Wednesday. But you can look up more there. 50501 movement. The Seattle Times was reporting that hundreds of people gathered Sunday afternoon, walking along their miles along their West Seattle waterfront to protest the deportation policies and show solidarity with immigrants. Houston Public Media was reporting that thousands were marching through West Houston yesterday to protest the new immigration policy changes, and also in Texas, NBC affiliate Dallas Fort Worth was protesting. That North Texans were protesting for the second weekend in a row over the immigration crackdowns that were happening there. So it's happening. Again, I wanted to do that because I feel like it is happening across the country, even though we may be seeing whatever our local news is saying of what happened in Minneapolis or St. Paul or in Chicago or, Los Angeles or Seattle, but it's actually happening across the country. And I think that was to your point, when you were saying in the break earlier, you're not telling people what to do and giving hope. Well, there is work happening right now at the activist level. Like, I think just calling into our, elected officials, yes, obviously you have to do that, but there are activist organizations and protests that are happening, and they're happening across the country right now. And I think that for me was really nice to see that. We've got one last break to get to here on the Gailey Show, but lots still to talk about. I want to hear from you. 952-946-6205. Caller control room. I want to hear what you're frustrated about, what you're thinking about over the next month. See you soon. If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grant Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Warm up your winter with Next Chapter Booksellers. Imagine chilly weather, a comfy blanket, and a captivating book. Reading in cold weather isn't just cozy, it's an experience, and Next Chapter Booksellers has all the bestsellers and new releases. Let a friendly bookseller guide you to the perfect winter read, because nothing beats getting lost in a book as the snow falls outside. So embrace the cold weather with a great book in hand from Next Chapter Booksellers, located off Snelling and Grand in St. Paul, and at nextchapterbooksellers.com.
At Queer Immunity, savor our seasonal menus from our chef, June Day, a James Beard Awards semifinalist. We feature locally sourced foods grown and produced by queer and BIPOC farmers. A full-service cafe offering your favorite cold brew coffees, hot teas, cider spritzes, and our very own house-made chai lattes. Start your day with our smoked bacon and egg breakfast sandwiches served on a biscuit with chipotle mayo and cheddar cheese. Vegan? Try our vegan sausage, egg, and cheese. For lunch, pair our seasonal salads and soups with a caprese panini served on Rose Street baguettes. Try one of our chickpea salad sandwiches, or enjoy the comfort of our grilled cheese with mouth-watering provolone, cheddar, and Gruyere melting on Rose Street breads. We serve sweet and savory pastries, and check out our new bar menu featuring local beer, wine, and custom double hard seltzers. Mention AM 950 at the cafe register for a free beverage with entree purchase. The Queer Community Cafe is open 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. More info at queercomunitymn.com.
Hey, it's Freddie Bell, host of New Beginnings, designed for those of us more seasoned, I'll say, with informative talk on everything from health, finance, local and regional news, volunteerism, spirituality, and even a bit of humor tossed in. So if you're proud to be a more seasoned listener, tune in to New Beginnings Sunday afternoons at 1 right here on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, AM 950.
Some days I feel so down, I can barely get out of bed. Is this depression?
I feel so tense and worried all the time. Is this anxiety?
Check up on your mental health. Take an online mental health screening at mentalhealthmn.org. Mental Health Minnesota has online mental health screenings, resources, support, and connections to treatment and crisis services. All anonymous, confidential, free of charge, and open 7 days a week. Mental Health Minnesota is here for you. mentalhealthmn.org. Sponsored by Mental Health Minnesota, the Minnesota Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Welcome back to the Gailey Show. A ranty Monday today. A ranty Monday. But when you go through when you're going through corporate media throwing us under the bus, and when you look at the scope and the speed with which they are enacting Project 2025, I do think and these letters that they're sending to, or emails rather, to federal employees, trying to get them to leave the government while also putting a hiring freeze, which is essentially shuts down a lot of those agencies. It does get ranty. I do want to hear your rants, if you've got one for us, that abides by FCC rules and regulations of language, no swearing. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205.
I want to mention something that I think is important. I did this today and I felt better. We look for those moments these days. I joined Wisconsin Dems as a member. I bought a $25 membership in Wisconsin Dems. And those are the things I think we should all be looking for. Like you said, run for school board or library board, try not to hide under your covers, but confront somebody or talk to them, or enlighten somebody, or encourage them to vote, or join an organization, or participate in a webinar, things that are meant to lift us up out of sort of being knocked back as we're feeling, and take charge of something, take some control, gives you something that makes you feel lifted up a little bit, right? And I think oftentimes this show does try to do that by giving you information about things that you might not know about. And today's episode was a little more, a cul-de-sac of frustration. But it's okay to feel that way as long as you rise above it by the end, right? I think that's what we're all trying to do, is feel better at the end of the day than we did at the beginning of the day, maybe.
Well, it was a day of perspective taking, looking at the scope of both Project 2025, but also protests, the scope of those.
Yes.
Over the majority of the country, we see these happening, and I think that's important. It was something that got on my radar after the war started in 2003, Iraq War Part 2, that there were more protests happening then, with more people. I believe it was the number of people participating in those protests exceeded the biggest days of the protests against the war in Vietnam.
Right.
But they had put moratorium on corporate media to say you cannot report on these things.
Pardon me.
I think some of those were self done.
Right.
That you didn't find out till later that it was local affiliates that were reporting these, but there was actual analysis into that, and we find out later that wow, the protests were so big, so large, so across the United States, of saying no, we don't want this war. But here you go. So I think, and that's why I wanted to sort of draw attention to that. I felt like, oh, is this happening again, where we are having protests across the country, but they're only getting covered by local outlets. We're not having anybody aggregate them, see the extent to which they are happening across the country.
I think there's a feeling of a little bit of desperation, but the people on the Democratic side are constantly sending out information about you're fighting, keep fighting. But here's a piece of ultimate optimism. There are 3 House races coming up this year to replace 3 people that are in that current administration. And if we won all 3 of those, which is beyond a long shot, 2 in Florida, 1 in New York. If we won all 3 of those races, we would have control of the U.S. House. So how many people didn't vote in those 3 districts that could be gotten to vote now for a Democrat? Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? If you want to have some happy day in 2025, that would be a very happy day to deliver the House of Representatives. It's not statistically impossible, although unlikely, perhaps.
You could call it a protest vote.
Yes,
you can't stomach the idea of voting for a Democrat. You could vote for a Democrat as a protest.
That's right.
Against what you don't like the Republicans doing right now, which we did see in a flip in Iowa.
That was
an election, that was special election that just happened.
Yeah, state legislative race that the district had been won by Trump by some factor of 12, 19%, something like that. And the Democrat flipped the seat to 52 to 48. And when you do that, you know how seldom that happens these days. And red hot Iowa to flip that state Senate seat was really good news, and the buyers' first indication in my mind of buyer's remorse. So we should celebrate our little victories where we can get them.
And I think I wanted to see the level of protests that are across the country, but a vibe that I'm also picking up on of why there maybe not be more of this and more organized fight back is a desire to see MAGA voters get what's coming to them.
Yes.
I don't know how to quantify that. I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting specifically to that, because I don't know how you would necessarily, measure that quantifiably. I guess if you did a poll, but you'd have to do a very well-designed poll and have a pretty good sample size to make that happen. But to get a sense of when I anecdotally watch things on Blue Sky, I see a lot of folks, using the FAFO, an acronym that I don't know how many people are sitting back waiting to say, hey, you know what? Let them have it. They wanted it. Let them have it. We're not going to get in the way.
In this article about this email that went out, there was a federal employee who said, I was hoping that on January 20th, when Mr. Trump, I voted for him twice. And when he finally took the oath of office, I was hopeful that he would deliver on what he promised. And when I got this email at 5:35, I realized that was not going to happen. So there were a lot of people who, against their own better judgment and good common sense, voted for this person, and now I think they deeply regret it. I think there's millions of them who regret it, and tomorrow there will be millions more.
It's a huge question to be asking with about 30 seconds left in the show, but is this the only way to get through to them?
It might be.
Is for them to have to experience what they're actually voting for.
A comeuppance.
Tomorrow on The Gailey Show, we are going to talk about setting healthy boundaries, because we're going to have to do that emotionally, spiritually, whatever spiritual practice you have, physically, if necessary. And we're also going to talk about what is the process for actually getting on a library board, getting on a school board. We want to look into that as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Have as good a Monday as you can possibly have. See you tomorrow.